Okay, so for my SP number 5, I watched the show Wizards of Waverly Place, which is a Disney Channel show aimed at middle childhood. It's a show where the family is wizards and it's three siblings living with their parents, and they're in this competition for who can be the family wizard. In the particular episode that I watched, there is a conflict between the two brothers over a magical item that is passed down through the ages, and there's also a conflict between the daughter in the show and her best friend who does not have magical powers, and whether or not the wizard, the girl who's a wizard, can survive without using magic. And in the show, they are also taking their driver's ed test. So, from a child's perspective, I would find the show very entertaining, and I would be intrigued by the show in that it's very realistic. It's, a family, probably very similar to mine in that aspect, and then I would be intrigued by the wizard aspect, which is not something that is realistic. It's something that would probably play on my imagination and just be it would be very interesting to me to see how these magic, like a what if I had magic, could I do that kind of thing. And I have a 7-year-old cousin who loves the show and who watches it for entertainment every day, and follows the show and the episodes. So from a child's perspective, I would probably find it very entertaining. From a parent's perspective, I would probably not find the show very educational, mostly just entertainment based for my child. There's also some adult humor, much like Aladdin or other Disney movies, that typically goes over the child's head that might cause me to pause and wonder if they're understanding what's being said in these, but it would also provide entertainment for me if this show is on in the background. But I would be concerned about the educational content, and also I would be concerned about, there's a lot of conflict, and the main character, the girl wizard, is kind of bratty and has an attitude, and I wouldn't want my children to be replicating that. Although she does, in the show, learn her lesson by the end and learn that, she should be respectful and honest. And so there's a good message at the end of the show, but I would still be worried that my child might develop an attitude as she was trying to be like this main character. From a teacher's perspective, I would probably look at the conflict between the two girls and whether or not the wizard could live without magic, and look at it as, well, what do you think the benefits are to having magic? How is that, play up their fantasy and see, could you be honest with somebody if you made a mistake? How would you get yourself out of certain situations with magic or without magic? And just, there's a huge honesty component to this particular episode that I watched, and I would probably ask the children about their views on honesty, and just really focused on the accountability aspect of this episode. For me personally, I really enjoy watching the show, because there was a lot of adult humor to the show, and child humor that I can appreciate as well. And I have watched the show in the past with my cousin, and so I'm familiar with the characters and was able to follow the show and know what was happening and know their history and their stories. So I really enjoyed the show. Yeah.